everyone, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we have my February wrap up. So February was not as good of a month as January. I will just say that now. I was trying to read every day. And in January, I succeeded. In February, I almost succeeded. But then we had to take a trip back to Arizona for a funeral. And I did not read for like 3 days out of the month, plus the beginning of March. And I've been hit or miss now with reading for things like that as well. So I'm trying to get back into it. I'm doing other hobby type of things, but the reading definitely has fallen by the wayside a little bit. I also have recognized that even though I was reading in February up until like the very, very end when we actually had to go on a plane, I wasn't reading as much like per day. I definitely feel like the reading tanked a little bit, like it calmed down a little bit. I did have some DNFs this month, which I didn't have in January. So just in general, it felt a little bit less good. It felt like a, not exactly worse reading month, but it definitely is like not as good as January was. So we're gonna jump into the stats first and talk about all of that. So let me make some room here. So in February, I read 8 books. Again, that's not a bad thing, really, except for 2 of them were DNFs. I'm in the middle of 4 books that I started in February and have moved into March. So like, that is a situation as well. I should not have started so many things, but I mean, like, one of them is an audiobook. One is a book that I took to my silent book club that like, I didn't want to read some of the other stuff that I was reading. I wanted to like do something new. And I do want to finish it. It's just, again, not the thing that I was like focused on. And then there was a couple other books that I started in like my day in the life little video thing. So like, yeah, I started a little bit too many things, but like 2 are physical, 1's an ebook, 1's an audiobook. I'm covering all of my bases, and I'm in the middle of 4 books. If we move into the pages read in February, it is saying I read 1,859 pages. Again, that's not counting any of the pages of the things that I'm currently reading. This is just pages of things that I finished or DNF'd. So my normal goal is like 2,000 pages per month. I probably did hit that with the other things that I started. Or at least got very, very close, but it's not really showing now. It'll show up in my March books. And then if we go down to my hours listened, this is the audiobook stuff that I did. I did not read as many audiobooks as in January, because January, as you can see, was 27 hours. It was a lot. February was 9.4. That is actually closer to my average for last year, getting to almost 10, but not quite. So that does make sense to me. We're now going to be getting into one of the, like, the newer things. And again, we're going to be going per month currently. Average amount of days to finish a book. So this is something that I just sort of, I was tracking a little bit last year, but I'm really like focusing on it this year. The average amount of days it took me to finish a book in February was 5.125. 5.1, let's just say, about 5 days book. That is very different than January. January was like 2 point something, I want to say. So again, I definitely felt like my reading slowed down a bit, even though I was reading every single day until the very, very end of the month. I wasn't finishing books as quickly. So that does make sense. I also have been tracking the average amount of pages per book, and this is the average amount of pages that I finished per book. So the fact that I had a couple DNFs definitely brought that number down. So we're at 232.4. Yeah, in January, my pages were like 300 something. Like, I was picking the bigger books. I've been mood reading this year and I have been really enjoying that. But yeah, February was just not the best focused month, maybe. I also had those 2 DNFs that if I would have finished it, the number of pages probably would have gone up actually, but instead they went down. We're going to be going into the individual stats that I track for everything per month. So the next thing that we have here is the reading method. How did I read the book? I read 4 ebooks, 2 physical books, and 2 audiobooks. That's a pretty good mix. As for the genre, I read 3 romances, 2 fantasy, 1 sci-fi, 1 historical fiction, and 1 classic. For the book format, 7 of them were novels and 1 was a manga. That's about the same as last time. As for indie or traditional, all of them were traditionally published this month. There were no indie books. How I got it, 4 of them were ARCs. That is actually my biggest category this month, and I've been very happy keeping on track with the ARCs that I have been reading so far. I've been using Shelf Control, which is a new app that is still technically in beta testing. I've talked about it a couple times on my channel, that I have absolutely been loving because it allows you to put in like due dates for the books, and it'll tell you like how many pages you have to read. And so it has really been keeping me on track with ARCs. I've been super happy about that. So I did read 4 ARCs in February. 2 were also books that I owned on my owned TBR prior to 2026. 1 was a book that was a reread, so again, off of my shelves, but technically I've read it before. And 1 was a book that I borrowed from the library. That actually was an audiobook that I borrowed from Libby from the library. I've not been focusing on library books as much right now because I'm trying to read down my TBR, but I couldn't help myself and I did listen to 1 that way. As for the age category, 5 of them were for adults and 3 were young adult. That does make sense. This is like my normal average ratio for books. I usually read more adult than any other age category right now. Moving into the publication year. Okay, so my publication year stats are off right now. In my monthly thing, I think I have to read a certain amount of books for the graph to show up appropriately. If I just showed you what it looks like right now, it's this. 3 2026 releases and 1 2025. Obviously that is not true. If I go in and just like add 1 more stat saying that I read another, let's say, backlist title, when I come back in, it'll now be correct. Besides the fact that backlist is so much more. It'll say 3 2026 releases, 1 2025 release. It'll say 4 backlists when it's actually 3, and it'll say 1 classic. For some reason, I think I just have to hit like up to the 10 spot on my chart in order for that stat to populate correctly. So my yearly one is perfectly fine. But for some reason, that did not want to populate correctly, so that's what it looks like right now. But this does make sense. Backlists will probably always be my biggest category. Things that I'm reading as ARCs should be from 2026, although I did read an older ARC that I actually got last year and did not get to complete. So I think that was my 2025 release. I said it was an ARC because it was. I technically had it as an ARC, but it came out last year. So that is on there as well. Before we get to the star ratings, the next thing that I have here is for author. This is something that I started last year that I have been really enjoying, and it's like where the author is from. So I do put in the author once per author for my entire spreadsheet. However, I do have like an author that I read last month in January that I also read this month in February. I updated it so that in our monthly stats, it'll still populate, but that author is only going to be shown once for the end of the year stuff. And so for the month of February, I read 8 different books, 8 different authors. 5 of the authors were from the United States, 2 were from Canada, and 1 was from Japan. So I just find it interesting to see where all of the authors are coming from. And I think that's the last part that we have here until star ratings. So like I said, the star rating is going to be lower currently because I did not have as good of a reading month, and in my spreadsheet I do track my DNFs with a 1 star. That does not necessarily mean I rate them that way when I go onto other platforms. And I think actually for both books that I rated as a DNF, I didn't give any stars because it was not necessarily it was a bad book. It was a me thing. So I do have 2 1 stars here for my DNFs, 2 3 stars, 3 4 stars, and 1 5-star read for the month. So my average right now for February is 3.1. My average for the whole year right now though is like a 3.8. So like again, January was very, very good. No DNFs or anything like that. The DNFs definitely took the rating down in February, but that's just what it's going to be. So those are all the stats we have. And so now we are going to talk about the books that I read in February, starting with those DNFs and moving on to my favorite book of the month. Okay, like I said, we are going to be starting with the DNFs. The first one I have here is an ARC. It is going to be To the Death by Andrea Tang. I hate DNFing ARCs, but this is one of those ones that it's just not for me. I went into the book expecting sapphic romance and magical battles. that is why I picked it up. I will say it does have some of those things, just not exactly the way I wanted. So like the biggest thing for me was the magical battles. This is more MMA fighting than magical battles. Like, yes, they do use magic in the battles, but the world building was not enough for me. There's no explanation on how the magic actually is incorporated. Is it words they say? Is it something they think? Like, how does this actually work? According to this world, from what I read, and I read almost 50% of this book, there's not really magic anywhere else. It's really just used for these MMA style battles. They have like competitions and like people are billed like this is the top bill and this is like the rookie and whoa, we're gonna have fights and things like that. But like there is magic in the fights, but it's really martial arts type of situation, which is not my thing. And they really dive into that sort of style. So I was already like, this is not exactly what I signed up for. Then we have the like sapphic romance sort of stuff. So basically one of our main characters is going to be in this new fight, and the other main character is the second for the other person that's going to be in the fight, and she has an ulterior motive because apparently this other girl's dad killed her brother in like an underground fight, an illegal fight. And so she wants to have her person fight the girl and win, like take her down, humiliate them because she wants revenge. So she's coming into everything sort of knowing this extra stuff. And at the same time, she's like, oh, I need to take her down, but I think she's cute. And so it just, again, didn't give me enough. Like, she's really going in with these really big ulterior motives. And yet we're still supposed to believe a romance. At the part that I stopped in, we really didn't have much of that kind of stuff. So I just was at the point where I'm like, I know this is not necessarily a bad book. It's just not my type of book. And I was not looking forward to reading it, and I was already slumping a little bit in the month, and so I did DNF. The next DNF I have here was also another sad one. I have Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is one that I read, or at least tried to read, in a like booktube favorites type of video. I did a vlog. I read 3 different books, or attempted. And this is again something that I just don't think I care enough about. The writing style in this is very easy to get into in the actual writing style. I read the first 2 books of the Poppy War series by R.F. Kuang. I definitely need to get into the 3rd one. I'm a little bit intimidated, but like it felt very similar in that way with the writing style. Like, it's very accessible. However, I didn't really care about anything that was happening. This does have this like magical Oxford Tower of Babel school, and they do translations of words, and that is supposed to imbue this silver with magic. But there's a lot of like, we went to class and here is the etymology of this word and like what this means. And it was a lot of like, she did a lot of research for this, and I just don't really care. I personally would need more from the characters and the motivations and the potential conspiracies that are going to be happening here, but it was so few and far between that I was just like, I don't know if I can get through this. The character, our main character of Robin, is a boy originally from the Canton area of China, and he is taken to England under like an apprenticeship almost sort of thing of this like professor who's going to be going here. And the reason he was picked is because he knows Cantonese and Mandarin, and in order to do the magic you have to like be able to dream in these languages and things like that. So we do have some good commentary and stuff about like the racism that these characters, especially like in the Chinese area, had going into like England and school, Oxford and things like that. So like it has good commentary, but for the actual like plot of the story, I needed more. I did DNF this and then look things up about it, and knowing how I felt about where I currently stopped and what things were going to happen at the end, I knew I wasn't going to be able to get through it and want to read that kind of stuff. There's a part, and I mentioned this in my vlog that I was doing, in like chapter 2 with like child abuse, that feels like it comes out of nowhere, and it's very graphic in a way that like, yes, we know the racism and stuff is in here, and these are old white guys talking about things, and that kind of stuff is in here, but it was like in such a weird like juxtaposition to like everything else that was happening at that like one part that it was like really, really hard to read. And I know that once we get to some of the other stuff in the end, like people that love this, love it because it devastates you. I don't think I can do that. So I'm sure the people that love this really do love this. And like, again, the writing style was very easy to get into, but this is again, just not my thing personally. Okay, we're gonna be now moving to my 3-star reads. So these are gonna be books that I finished, and the lowest rated ones that I have this month are 3 stars, which is not necessarily a bad thing. The first book that I'm going to talk about is By the Book by Jasmine Guillory. This is the second book in the like Meant to Be series, which is the Disney stories taken and made into like adult romances. They're very closed door though, so still Disney-fied in a way, you know what I mean? And this is one of those ones where it was like, it was a book. It was fine. This is supposed to be based on Beauty and the Beast, and it's dealing with like publishing and things like that. I personally think because it's such a contemporary story, the Beauty and the Beast aspect doesn't 100% work because it wasn't as much a like step for step of that book. Like we don't necessarily have people that are trapped and somebody is beastly. Like it wasn't exactly what I wanted from it. The actual romance was fine. I don't know, there was just something about it where I was like, and I did listen to this one on audio. I got it from my library. This is the one that I borrowed because I loved If the Shoe Fits last year. And I know that these are different authors, different bases of the story, like different inspirations. But the actual like just romance was fine. The characters were fine. Nothing was like 100% standout. Nothing was bad. It was just okay. And it was a book and I will probably forget about it sooner rather than later. I definitely want to keep going in this series. I'm very curious about the other authors and the other story inspirations, but this one was okay. The next 3-star that I have here is Until the Clock Strikes Midnight by Alicia Dow. So this one was an arc that I read. And this is a 3-star because there were some things that I really enjoyed and then some things that I didn't enjoy as much. So it was still good, but there was a little bit too many things where I'm just like, I wish it had more. And this is basically because this is sort of like a fantasy romance between a fairy who is on like the guardian celestial side. Fairies are usually not the guardians, but she has gone to this school, she had her top marks, and so she's been given this like last final test to help this girl named Lucy sort of like get her happily ever after. On the flip side, we also have this other guy who is a misfortune, and he is basically put in place to stop people from having unhappily ever afters and just sort of live with an ordinary ever after. I absolutely loved this sort of system in this world, that it's not just like a happily ever after is like your main achievement. You could have happily ever afters, ordinarily ever afters, unhappily ever afters, miserably ever afters. The fact that these people are almost on two sides of the same coin. One is working for the utmost happiness and the other one is working just to keep them from being miserable. I really like that. Well, these characters, so Calamity's on the misfortune side and Darling is on the guardian sort of side, they end up having a sort of like fake dating romance type of situation. My biggest thing with this is that it is YA, and I really wanted it to be older because these characters had been in school for the misfortune and the guardian sort of situation, and they feel like they should be older, like almost like those ethereal beings of like undeterminate age, they can live forever type of situations. And so I wish they actually were in that sort of category. They act very young, which is probably why it is rated YA. Even Lucy, I'm pretty sure, is supposed to be older than 18, but she also acts very young. Everybody is like having their first loves, which again is not necessarily a bad thing, but for the way that this is set up, I just wanted it to have a little bit more depth to it. I wanted it to have more consequences and that kind of thing. I really did like the fact that we have queer characters in here. It felt very like a queer normative world because Lucy is also crushing on like customer that she has that's another woman. Like I really liked that aspect of it. I also like the fact that we do have talk about mental health in here. In the author's note, content warning, that kind of stuff, I'm pretty sure the author mentioned it is specifically bipolar representation. However, it is in a magical setting, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but they do call it something else during the story. I did not like that they talk about this magical illness that Darling, the fairy, has in a very magical way, even though it is very similar to a bipolar type of situation. But in this magical world, she solves her issues with it and uses pills, medicine. If you're going to make bipolar your thing and then put it in a magical world where nobody else is talking about pills, like at least give it an herb or a magic spell or something to make it feel more magical. Like that took me out of the story a lot. And then those pills were only like mentioned in the first half of the story, and then it fell to the wayside. And I'm like, if you're really gonna make that a focus, make it consistent. So I just really wanted a little bit more from this one. Like there was a lot of potential here. Like I really felt it would have been an amazing adult fantasy romance with the different things that they were talking about, both for the happily ever afters and the miserably ever afters, and like the mental health type of situation. Like I just wanted more from it. It felt very juvenile, which I know it is supposed to be YA, but it felt juvenile in a way where like it could have been amazing to have it be adult, and it wasn't. Okay, we're gonna be moving into the 4 stars that I have here now. The first one is Anne of Avonlea by Ellen Montgomery. I am doing an Anne of Green Gables read through this year. I've been basically doing 1 book a month, although I actually am in the middle of the 3rd one because I started it in February and I'm currently doing it in March. And I'm listening to these on audio, mostly just because I like having an audio when I go and do things, and these are my classic category. There's not really anything too crazy in here because the first Anne of Green Gables was written for a middle grade audience, and we grow up as she grows up. So in this book here, book 1 goes from when she's 11 to 16. This is about 16 to 18. So it's slowed down a little bit, but it still feels like we get a ton of stuff going on. We are introduced to some new characters, some new friends. We also have the twins in this one, Davy and Dora. And I gave this book a 4-star because even though I still love Anne, I still love the book series, and I love how Ella Montgomery actually writes it, where we get a lot of characterization through Anne and through Anne's dialogues more than like descriptions of things. Like it's a very different writing style than we would assume with a lot of books nowadays. Like it's a very dialogue focused. I just didn't personally like the inclusion of Davy and Dora in the fact that like Dora, we don't really get to see her very much. Where it's very much focused on Davy, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but he is so naughty and it's like overemphasized. He is so naughty over and over and over again, and the way that they talk to him about things is a lot of like, and it is like, it was from the 1800s or whatever, but like talking about how he needs to be a gentleman and how his actions would relate to, they talk about heaven a lot and trying to be good in that situation. And it just got to a point where I was like, I think this is hitting me over the head just a little bit too much. So even though I absolutely love Anne and the characters, and I really liked a lot of the stuff that happened in here, it's a 4-star. The first one is still probably my favorite. My next 4-star is a manga. Usually I talk about those first, but Anne of Avonlea was a reread for me. It's going to be Love at First Memory Volume 1 by Narumi Hasagaki. So this is a book that I think was a very good start to the series. I definitely want to read more, but basically we have this woman who wakes up with amnesia, and she apparently is like rich, an heiress, and because of that she had been dating these guys. For different reasons. Some are based on the fact that she's an heiress and needs to marry somebody who is higher up. Some are supposedly based on like childhood best friends or potentially for love. And she's been told that before her accident happened, she had finally decided on which of these guys she was going to marry and be her person. But then the accident happens and she has amnesia and she doesn't remember any of these people. So we're really seeing her see her relationship through new eyes, and there's multiple of them. There's like 4 guys here. It makes me wonder if this is going to be like an actual Why Choose manga. I don't think we've ever had an actual one like that, but I'm curious because in volume 1 I think we got to look at 3 out of 4 of the guys a little bit closer, and I like seeing the like realization from her of different things, because she doesn't really remember stuff. Obviously the guys remember things, but like we don't really get their perspective. So I'm really enjoying seeing everything happen. I need more from it, which is why it's only a 4. Like it wasn't like a brand new favorite first start, but I feel like a first manga that is a 4-star is still a really good rating because I'm very, very intrigued. I need to know what's going on. I need more about these guys in this situation. The other reason I gave it a 4 is that some of the panels I did have to go back and read a couple times to actually get the flow. Like it didn't flow as well as some other mangas in my opinion. I was like a little confused, but I am invested. I definitely need to see where this is gonna go. I need to see who she's gonna pick. If she's gonna pick, like I would love it to be an actual why choose. I don't think it's going to be, but I like the idea of she has amnesia, she likes these people, she apparently has fallen in love with at least one of them, and I need to know what's gonna happen. My last 4-star is Murder by Memory by Olivia Waite. This is one that I read during my booktube favorite vlog, so I did go into more detail there. But this was a novella that is very much sort of like Agatha Christie in space. It's like very sci-fi. Our main character is a detective on this spaceship that is going on this very long journey, and they've been on this journey for like 300 years. And they have this really interesting situation of being able to have their memory like in a book, and then you can go through your life in a body, and then when you are done with that body, or the body, you know, dies or whatever, you can be in a new one. They have this like interesting way of doing that. And that is sort of what comes in this like murder mystery thing, because she wakes up in somebody else's body. It's not her body. She was not supposed to wake up in somebody else's body. And she wakes up in this different body, and at the same time, somebody else has been murdered, and she has to like figure out because of this whole sci-fi situation. I really did like it. I wanted a little bit more from it, and that's why it's a 4-star. I think again, it's probably just because it's a novella. It's very new. It's very intriguing. I liked the fact that the mystery had to deal with the sci-fi elements. It's a very queer normative world, which is also great. I think book 2 came out recently, or it's coming out this month, called Nobody's Baby, and so the mystery is going to be less murder mystery, more there's a baby on a doorstep, and there's not supposed to be because of the fact that the sci-fi body nature of stuff, that should not happen. Like I'm just very, very intrigued, and I really liked the setup. So yeah, 4 stars. And then it looks like we're actually down to the final book of the month. This is again one that I read and talked about in my booktube favorite vlog, and I gave it 5 stars because it was my favorite. Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. This is a romance that is very much focused on pregnancy. So if you do not want to read about that, you're not going to want to read this. I absolutely loved it. We have these 2 characters here, Winifred, who goes by Win, and Bo, and they have a one-night stand at a party, and then she ends up pregnant. She does have a limb difference on her hand, and it's based on the author's own one, so very own voices for that. Bo also has a prosthetic leg, so we have lots of disability representation and things that go along with that. But I think my favorite part was just how well the characters were as characters. Like they're having to deal with this surprise pregnancy sort of situation. Obviously we know that that's going to be in the book because it's in the synopsis and it's like based on the whole book. But I liked the slow burn nature of their romance. The one night stand does happen very early in the book, obviously, and sometimes that can be a turnoff for me, but the fact that the characters were very relatable and related to each other super quickly, like I was so into it. And then we have the slow burn sort of friendship buildup of the relationship, which was so, so good. Like I just absolutely loved watching these characters and watching them grow and have to deal with pregnancy, which is again, maybe not something I would normally pick up in a book, but it was just so, so well done. I loved both of our characters so, so much. I loved their support network of friends and things as well. I need to read more by this author because I really, really enjoyed this one. If you want more of my actual thoughts, I guess like look at the vlog, but like it was just so good. Like I can't get it out. Like it was just so, so well done. And then because that was our 5-star read, that's all we have. Like I said, February was a little bit less good than January, less things read, but I am in the middle of 4 books that I will be talking about in March. So I guess there's that. I was reading things, I just have been reading them a little bit slower. And so if you guys liked this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Let me know what your favorite book of February was if you had one. And if you want to see more videos, please subscribe. I have videos coming out Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, so I will see you then. Bye!